Good morning, welcome back. Excuse me, my voice is breaking already. Welcome back to Gaming Matters, day 2 of our first live event in 2 years. So all very exciting. Thank you so much for joining in person, going through the tests again. Thank you so much if you're joining online on the World Wide Web. Nice to see you again. And thank you everyone for all the feedback and comments from yesterday's program. Overwhelming positive feedback, amazing feedback on socials, some really good learnings, but really felt very good. Obviously for people here as well, going through the testing process, everyone felt very safe, and it was lovely to see people gathering together in small groups, but gathering again and being able to talk, but most of all feeling safe. And the best comment that we had of all was from Dom. You should ask Durex to sponsor the safest event around. So, but thank you, Dom, for that comment. Just very quickly before we start today, just wanted to remind you, this is the first of 5 events for us. In November, we're doing Sports Matters in here, followed by Music Matters the next day in here. Most importantly, Ranji, we are doing Marketing Matters live on the 24th of November, live at Suntech with our friends at the World Federation of Advertisers. Ranji's over there. So please do join us for that. The day after that, we're also doing VidCon Asia Summit in here. So we're doing 4 days live at Suntech. So please do join. Again, the program over the last 2 days has been absolutely fantastic. Some great speakers. And today is all about marketing. It's all about where the money is. We're starting off with a brilliant survey. We're going to be talking a little bit about the survey with 2CV and the World Federation of Advertisers. We're going to be looking at the metaverse again. A lot of conversation about metaverse yesterday. We're going to be looking again at the metaverse, but what it actually means for brands with Wonderman Thompson. We then have a wonderful panel with people talking about their experiences from the brand side and the content owner side with the World Federation of Advertisers. And then we have 2 keynote interviews from the brands themselves. We have MasterCard and we have Unilever. So what a great program, all done this morning. This afternoon, we have no programming so that people can meet each other. We want people to be able to network safely, but we want people to be able to meet each other. So this room is yours this afternoon. You're allowed to meet in groups of up to 5 people, as long as you have your face mask on. There are some wonderful people walking around with red lanyards on, the safety people. Please do help them by keeping your face mask over your nose, and then they won't come over and tell you off for it falling down. So that's the basic housekeeping. Groups of 5, face masks on, keep 1 meter apart. You don't have to sit on your own tables as well. You can all gather and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's what is happening today. Thank you again very much for joining us live. Thank you very much for joining us on the web. On with the show. So 2 years ago at Gaming Matters in 2019, 2CV got together with the World Federation of Advertisers and launched the Gaming Demystified survey. And it got global coverage because the results into marketers' opinions on gaming at the time was pretty amazing. It was eye-opening. James Redden, who's one of the co-founders of 2CV, has subsequently put together a follow-up survey this year. And I don't want to say too much about it, but the results are staggering. So without further ado, and absolutely setting him up for that one, please welcome our first speaker of the day, James Redden.
Okay. Thanks, Jasper. Great to be here with these very bright lights. Thanks for coming, everyone, and everyone online. So yes, we did this research 2 years ago, so it's been great to do it pre-COVID, post-COVID. So it really was to help non-endemic brands understand how they can use gaming as a marketing channel. Okay, so we've all seen some big numbers around gaming. And I think the COVID effect has been strong. So we've seen just a lazy 500 million additional gamers in the last 2 years since we did this research in 2019. And spending has also increased 16%. So it was already a massive industry, has only got bigger. And over to our survey. So this is our survey of senior marketers. They were all brand owners in Asia of non-endemic brands, so non-gaming brands. And what we saw in 2019 was about 6 in 10 said, look, I've at least got some interest in putting my marketing budget into gaming. And we've seen a massive increase in that in the last 2 years. So this is really the theme of the research findings, is that gaming is growing. Gaming got a lot of publicity during COVID, and that is being reflected in more and more marketers being interested in the gaming opportunity and whether they should put their marketing budget into gaming channels. So with increased interest amongst marketers, we are seeing more brands saying that they have invested in gaming, in some form of gaming. So in 2019, the survey, 32% of the marketers we surveyed had said that they'd invested in gaming, and that had almost doubled this year to 62%. So many more brands getting involved. And we also asked, like, how much do you expect to spend or invest in marketing in the coming 12 months? Invest in gaming, I should say. And in the 2019 survey, the average was about $500,000 USD. And that has just flown this year's survey to 1.4 million. So we're seeing many more brands investing and investing more as well. And look, we see that in the media, we see it with the brands who are involved heavily in gaming. And look, these ones you probably expect. You expect the tech brands, you might expect Red Bull, expect the athletic brands to be involved. But probably more interesting is some of these other brands, our friends at MasterCard who are here today, a lot of luxury brands being involved now, Campbell's Soup, energy brands. So the message really is, look, you don't need to be a sports brand to invest in traditional sports. You don't need to be a gaming or a tech brand to invest in gaming. So we asked marketers, what's your perception of investing your marketing budget into gaming? And this is the 2019 results. So even then, a lot of marketers saw it as innovative, relevant, impactful, but 6 in 10 thought it was risky. So there was still quite a bit of uncertainty in the marketers that we spoke to about how they can go about investing in gaming. So fast forward to 2021, it's still innovative, but it's more relevant. So perceptions of relevance have grown, and also perceptions of it being risky have declined. So the objections amongst marketers for investing in gaming has declined over the last 2 years. Although, if you want to take a negative view, still half see it as potentially a risky proposition. So there is still some way to go there. So what are the perceived benefits of investing in gaming amongst senior marketers? Most of the marketers we surveyed saw at least some benefits, and that had risen over the last 2 years. So they certainly see audience benefits. So the opportunity to reach attractive audiences, and usually they talk about, I can find younger people, so millennials, Gen Zs, highly engaged audiences, harder to reach audiences, so young men, for example. Also lower costs, so the expectation is I will be able to reach these people at a lower cost through other channels compared to other channels, and with lower cost becomes a better ROI. So the better ROI was something that did grow this year compared to 2019. More marketers do perceive that they will get a stronger return on their marketing spend through gaming channels. Look, a big finding in 2019 was a lot of marketers just didn't get gaming. They just didn't get the industry, especially if they weren't gamers themselves. So this came through as a real barrier in 2019. You could see that from those survey results, that only 1 in 5 marketers said, yeah, I think I've got a strong handle on the opportunities out there through gaming, whereas 41% said, look, I really don't know anything, really. And in the theme of the growth of these results in the last 2 years, that knowledge has really improved. So that strong knowledge number has more than doubled to 44%. And importantly, only 15% of marketers said that they have low or no knowledge. So marketers have really got themselves educated in the last 2 years, which is great. Again, if you want to take a glass half empty view, only half of marketers, less than half of marketers have a strong understanding of gaming opportunities. So there is still a lot of growth of knowledge that still has to happen. So the concerns that marketers have about investing in gaming, the top 4 here were insufficient industry information. So when they talk to us, they say, look, there's all these numbers flying around about the size of the industry and the prize pools and the eyeballs involved. Which number should I trust? Not being sure how to measure the opportunity, a lack of expertise internally in their organisations, but also within the agencies they work with, and potential brand damage when sponsoring gamers. So that brand damage point did really come up as a bigger concern in 2021. It wasn't such a big concern. It feels like as marketers have become more educated about the industry, about gaming, there is that understanding that there could be some brand damage, as with any sort of influencer type situation. On the positive side, fewer marketers are worried about gaming being not relevant for them and their brands. There was 2 concerns that were very prominent in 2019. Look, this is the wrong audience for me, it's the wrong audience for my brand, or look, it's not relevant for my markets. And both of those declined significantly in 2019. So we're getting beyond that feeling that, hey, this is not for me, this is a different group of people, it's not relevant for my brand, which was very common in 2019 and thankfully less so currently. So what do marketers want to know? Who is the audience? What is their profile? How big are they? What is the reach? So this is important understanding if you are an agency or you are a gaming organisation who are trying to sell to non-endemic brands. How do I invest? So I hear about content creators and streamers. I hear about esports. How do I go about investing in those platforms or those channels? And how do I measure effectiveness, and what are the brand risks? So again, the brand risk issue came up as more important this year than it did in 2019. So it's something that we need to keep in mind when speaking to non-endemic brands. So who do brands want to hear from in terms of gaming opportunities? So that can be both from general agencies, but also gaming companies as well. So what we've got here is the 2019 and 2021 results here. You can see specialist gaming agencies, fairly well the same result from 2 years ago. General media or comms agencies has grown a little bit. But what was the big change in this year's results is marketers were much more open to hearing directly from gaming companies. So you can see esports organisers really flew up from 29% to 47%. Even game developers rose as well. This feels consistent with this idea that marketers are more educated, more comfortable with understanding the gaming industry, so they're more comfortable speaking directly to an esports organiser, for example, rather than necessarily always having an agency involved. Okay, understanding the industry structure. I mean, this is a big concern that a lot of marketers have who don't understand gaming. They're like, I just don't understand where all the pieces fit. It all sounds very confusing to me. So briefly taking us through an overview of the industry. This is how gaming used to work, very straightforward. There was a game, there was players, there was a company that managed and distributed the game. What we have now is still the game. We have streamers. So our friends at Twitch who spoke yesterday is a big part of this. These are professional broadcasters. They broadcast themselves gaming and they broadcast themselves on these platforms like Twitch, like Facebook Gaming, like YouTube. And of course you have fans who follow these streamers, watch these streamers. And then the second big part of the industry is esports. So you have teams, you have players who train and become absolute experts, professional athletes in these games, then they compete in esports. And esports does create another whole lot of content and it is broadcast onto the platforms such as Twitch and YouTube. Now, the fans typically watch these events online. In the past, pre-COVID, although it's coming back, they also attend these in person in very large venues. And the final piece of it is the event organisers who organise the esports tournaments or esports events, and often that will be the game publisher. So this is a very simplified view of the gaming industry to help non-endemic brands. We'll quickly talk about 2 of the key parts, which is the esports and also the streamers or the content creators. Look, for the content creators, Twitch is really the leader in terms of live broadcasts of people gaming. And if you don't know Twitch, this is the front page of their games page. You can see thousands of people at any one time watching these broadcasters or streamers playing games. And this is what a stream will actually look like. This is I think the most popular streamer on Twitch, Ninja, who has 17 million followers. So you can see him playing picture in picture. You see there's always a social feed. So there really is a level of intimacy that their fans can have with the individual streamers that is beyond what you might get with a traditional sports person. And then what does this mean for brands? There's just plenty of branding opportunities. I mean, we heard a great example from Steve Ford yesterday for Twitch, for Pringles. Here's a zoom in from later in that same stream. You can see there's clearly a Red Bull fridge in the background. You know what PC he's using, you know what headsets he's using, and it really summed up well by this quote from McKinsey saying, like, these streamers, they have their fans, they will act as ambassadors or influencers for your product, and there's many different ways brands can take advantage of those large audiences. Esports is the other thing we hear a lot about. It's usually in the context of, wow, look at these huge prize pools, and that is true. $30 million for the Fortnite World Cup. Currently happening now is the international, that's $40 million US. But more relevant for brands is really the branding opportunities available through esports. And look, there's so many different ways you can get involved as a brand. And you can see a lot of traditionally the brands have been those tech brands, have been the endemic brands. So you can see Secret Lab, you can see Nike, you can see the PC brands. But I put the example of Chupa Chups because it's just a great example that has nothing to do with gaming, it has nothing to do with tech, but it's just using esports to get its brand out there. And that's a really nice reminder that you don't need to be in the industry or in the broader tech industry to invest in gaming. So back to the survey, we asked the marketers, look, if you are investing in gaming, where are or how are you investing? And those two things we just talked about were certainly prominent. So content creators or streamers jumped up considerably from 2019, some 34% up to 54%. Esports stayed stable, but still prominent. I mean, esports has been more disrupted by COVID than the streamers world have. There's also a lot of brands who are just doing more of a basic media buy. So we're putting our ads on gaming platforms such as Twitch, such as Steam, or such as any other online platform. And there's also common is putting your brand into games. So that can be something like a pop-up ad. So if you've ever played a mobile game, you see a pop-up ad coming up for a brand. But more in-depth is in-game advertising, which has risen quite strongly, as you can see. So this is where your brand is much more native to the experience, might be on a billboard in the background of a game, and might be a product in the game, and that has really risen considerably. So we do have an example of in-game advertising. So just to end with a few case studies, hopefully for some inspiration, this is Unilever's Hellmann's mayonnaise brand. They latched onto Nintendo's wildly successful Animal Crossing game, which everyone was seen to be playing during lockdown. It was a great campaign about food waste. So in the game, players could take their expired turnips to Hellmann's Island, and for every player that did that, the brand then donated a meal to an actual food bank in real life. So a really great social message, and it just got a lot of coverage. So over 100,000 meals donated. 47 million people reached with the campaign, got a lot of press, and certainly won a lot of awards as well. So a great example of integrating your brand into the game experience. More local example from Malaysia, Maxis Esports. So Maxis is a mobile network up in Malaysia. They wanted to get involved in gaming, but they felt they were a little bit late to the game. A lot of their competitors were already doing various activations and various partnerships. So they said, let's go and do a really deep dive into the industry. Let's really support the Malaysian gaming industry. So they said, let's create our own esports team. So they did that in tandem with Team Secret, which is a European esports organization. And you could see they created Team Secret PUBG, sponsored by Maxis. So that meant Team Secret could use their expertise of building up building up the team, whereas Maxis used their expertise in marketing really to create the profile of the team, to use their marketing expertise. And it really had a lot of strong brand results. So a lot of team followers. Speaking to Maxis, a lot of strong brand equity improvements, such as being much more preferred amongst younger audiences, also brand perceptions such as we're the best network for gaming, for example, all improved considerably. And from a revenue perspective, they also increased direct carrier billing, a lot of it which was driven by gaming transactions. So a couple of case studies there. That is it for the research. If you are a non-endemic brand and you really want to understand this industry, we have a very detailed, like 80-page report with all the stats and all the insight that you need if you really need to be educated on the gaming opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
You can hear me. Thanks so much, James. And well, good. Nothing like a live event, you know. Nothing quite like a live event. We've forgotten about that, but then you know we're really live, right? So, very excited to be here and kick off this panel where we're going to talk about just how much gaming matters to marketers. And this morning we have with us Charlotte McEleny, publisher of the Drum Asia Pacific, as well as Xinyi, who's a senior manager with Mindshare, lots of experience on gaming, and Anthea. Are you with us, Anthea? I think you are.
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, good morning. So let's jump right into it as we're live and make the most of it. So let's start with the statistics. Brands are more keen on gaming than ever before. 85% of marketers interested, up from 56 in 2019. And they're putting their money where their mouth is. So investment seems to have grown, projected investment seems to have grown from $500,000 up to 1.4 on average for 2022. I'm going to start with you, Xinyi. I mean, you're at Mindshare, massive media agency. Is this what you're seeing across your clients, across the industry?
So gaming itself, this word has definitely been a lot more common now when we talk to brands. Brands are definitely recognizing that gaming is a massive space, and the kind of opportunity that it can bring to them. They're also realizing that gaming is not just for specific brands. So the example that James showed earlier, Hellmann's. So if you don't know, Hellmann's is a mayonnaise brand, and the idea that a mayonnaise brand can actually create such a successful gaming campaign, it really shows a lot, and it really shows that it's not about the products that you have, but the way you bring your message into the gaming world.
So it's non-endemic brands you're seeing. It's all types of, not the usual suspects, so to speak. Anthea, I'm going to bring you into this. I love this. It feels like we're in a TV studio. We're going to patch you in now. Sportfive used to be a traditional sports consultancy, but has since moved big time into esports, from what I understand. Tell us more about that. What's driving that?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to the conversation, are you hearing a lot of feedback, or is everything okay there?
We're all good now. Go for it.
Yep. So for sure, we're getting a lot of interest and inquiries about gaming and esports from brands across every industry. Even before the pandemic, as a traditional sports organization, we started to see the power of this space. Many marketers did not understand it. They were curious, but they were also unsure about spending money in this space, right? We kept on hearing it's kids playing games. That has since changed. Now every conversation we have with brands, if they're not already doing something in this space, they're planning to and asking about it. So we're experiencing this across the vast majority of categories. As a sports agency, we've spent many years growing and cementing brand partnerships across traditional sports. But now we're working really hard to keep up with the pace of the gaming industry while encouraging and bringing brands to be brave, to jump in and be part of the journey. The number of sponsorship deals we've done across the business in the last couple of years has more than tripled. We're working with brands that we did not work with before in traditional sport, but who recognize the power of being in a gaming community, engaging with its influencers and its passionate fans. We've definitely seen a jump in non-endemic brands getting into the space. Last year, 63% of new deals made across the gaming business were non-endemic brands.
Oh, that's very, very cool. I kind of forget that we're live and we can jump in. You're so used to being on Zoom and not being able to just chat like real people. Charlotte, you are in such a vantage position. You see so much across all the different campaigns in our industry. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I thought I'd do a little bit of research before coming up here, and I
Great.
searched how many articles we'd written about gaming, and this is like the entire history of the drums coverage, but there were 4,000 articles, which
Wow.
is a lot.
Yeah.
But that shows two things. I think that shows, that some brands have been playing in this space for a long, long time. Some gaming entities have been commercialized through marketing for a long, long time. But more anecdotally, I am seeing that ramp up. Our journalists across every single market are getting press releases about gaming every single day.
Wow.
And one of the things I thought I would have a little research into is kind of something that steps more into that, I guess, the innovation space of the metaverse and look at NFTs. And literally, I think in the last kind of month, we've written articles on Stella Artois, Vogue, ASICS, Glenfiddich,
Wow.
Coca-Cola, Dole. So, to your point, this isn't endemic brands. This is whiskey getting into crypto media. That's the real kind of new part of this from my perspective anyway. So from my perspective, it shows the diversity of the brands that are getting involved now, and kind of you don't have to be endemic as long as you can find a reason to play in that space that's credible, which I think is exciting, and I think that's why we're all here today listening.
No, I love it. It feels like gaming's gone properly mainstream, and it's just interwoven into the fabric of what we do as an industry, which is fantastic. Now, James talked a little bit about the COVID effect and what's that's driven gaming numbers of the audience up by 500 million. Is that it? Is there more to it? Why do you think brands are just embracing gaming right now more than ever?
So, sorry. No, I was just trying to say, gaming itself is such a massive industry. If you look at it, it's the largest entertainment industry. It's bigger than the music industry, bigger than the movie industry. Gaming itself has 3.2 billion gamers at this moment.
Wow.
And if you translate that, it's 3.2 billion customers. And if you look at it that way, it becomes extremely attractive to brands. So that's why everyone's trying to hop on this, because you want that 3.2 billion customers that's on your site, and this is one of the best ways to actually get to them.
What do you think, Charlotte?
I mean, most marketers want scale, right? So I think you look at those numbers and instantly it's like, oh, that's exciting. And I think we'll dive into the sort of reality of that, or how what sits within those numbers a bit later. But that's definitely, I think, what's kind of driving that initial interest. But the COVID impact was a real deal. We saw a big change in our habits. We know as people we changed our habits.
Yeah.
A lot of the sort of streaming that happened in terms of video isn't actually, you can't advertise next to it. That's coming down the line a little bit more. But with gaming, there was actually quite a big opportunity, I think, to get involved very quickly, sort of during COVID. But you did have to be quick. One of my favorite examples is actually another Animal Crossing example, and it was Sentosa. Those guys are a travel destination, even locally or for tourists, and suddenly no one could go. We were in lockdown. And you had this really kind of incredible movement of people playing Animal Crossing because it was so relaxing, it was very gentle. Everyone was super stressed because of what was going on, which fit perfectly with the Sentosa brand. It's a place where you go to relax and to have fun. So is Animal Crossing. And so you could create this kind of virtual environment where you replicated Sentosa in a time where people couldn't visit. I just love that because it just tapped into what consumers wanted to do, but it also really fit with the brand. And I think, for me, that's like the perfect mix.
I love it. We're talking about the scale. It's all these 3.2 billion gamers. We've talked about the speed to market. You've got to be relevant. You've got to be quick. And also with gaming, the opportunities that, unfortunately, streaming video content doesn't afford. Anthea, what else are you seeing? What else, in your opinion, has inspired marketers to think about gaming and moving into esports?
I do think marketers are really starting to see the power and the influence of the space. The gaming world has gotten so much closer to them. They're hearing chatter all around. They're feeling the intensity of its fans. So they just really want to speak to this growing audience to get the brand, closer to the gaming community.
And in terms of the gaming community, I think James talked about innovation as a real key attribute. And Charlotte, you just talked about that. It's such a sexy attribute to have. Nobody wants to be not innovative. And no doubt, if you want to position yourself as that, gaming feels like an easy fix. Do you think that's something that's really attractive, the innovation part?
I think it's drawing a lot of marketers in. I think the marketing community is inherently interested in that kind of shiny new thing. But that's also a danger, doing it for innovation's sake. I think, you do have to really understand your target audience, what your brand stands for, your brand purpose, and feed those kind of real core principles of your sort of marketing into why you're doing gaming, rather than just sort of thinking, oh, this is cool, I want to be cool, because that will come across as inauthentic. So, the NFT example is a really good example of that. Why are you playing in that space?
Yep.
Are you going to sell something? Are you going to make money? Is it attached to something else? There's lots of reasons why brands should get involved, but I think that, you have to be asking those questions of yourself before you dive in.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Charlotte. So I feel that gaming is actually a really great space also to go into innovation. Just the idea that there's so much different ways to actually access gaming. It's such an engaging platform compared to all the other sort of passion spaces and all the other platforms. Gaming really gives you a chance to, tap into it. You have so many ways. Let's say you can work with, the game. You can integrate. You can work with streamers to work with that game. You can create tournaments. So there's so many access points when it comes to gaming that it gives you the chance to be innovative compared to a lot of other platforms.
So intrinsically, just being in gaming, there are way more opportunities to really push the boundaries and be a little bit more, I guess, interesting.
Yeah.
As a brand.
But like Charlotte says, so it's also very important for brands to not just go in, for the sake of going in because it's innovative. Brands really need to make sure that the message is right, that the brand fits, that way of going into the game.
Because I think this moves us into that the whole area of authenticity. And Charlotte, you talked about it. You've got to make sure it aligns with your brand purpose, what you want for the business. Because, and I know, Anthea, you've talked about this as well. You managed a lot of the esports gamers. That authenticity extends not just to how real the gamers are, but the fans and what they expect too, right? Are you able to talk to us a little bit about that and how brands need to think about, just being real and being authentic in this space?
So was that question for me?
So I know when with esports, no worries, with esports, really important to be authentic. And I think in gaming as a whole, that's critical too. Is that something, you advise or you see that needs to come through more than ever?
Yeah, for sure. I think, being authentic is key to any brand getting into the esports space. Otherwise, they're going to get shoot out of the space, right? The fans are going to be able to see through them. So I think that's a buzzword, being authentic. I did kind of want to go back to the innovation question.
Yes, please.
As both Charlotte and Xinyi did share, that there are certainly many entry points to demonstrating innovation in esports. But mainly, I think for brands seen in the gaming space, the perception of them being seen as the first mover in the industry does position them as being innovative in itself. They're seen as testing out a new frontier and experimenting and developing with a trend. So just being in the space really lends that association, which is great. However, innovation does need to be demonstrated through action and delivery. Otherwise, the journey stops there. So that kind of goes back to being authentic.
And with that comes, and I love that you brought that up. It's such a good point to go back to brand purpose and remembering what you stand for as a brand. And that's not too, that's basic. That's not too different. That's not something you need to think about just because it's gaming. And there's so much in gaming that actually feels same, but different. It's not as daunting as it needs to be, right? We talked about this, and you mentioned social media, Charlotte. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think there's parallels to draw with these moments that we've had before in marketing where, a technology or a kind of way of working has kind of sort of disrupted the way that we've been thinking for a long time. And social media feels like the best example for this. I remember in the early days of social media, you saw just brands kind of rushing in, trying to do things. Even to this day, we've made mistakes on how to measure social media because we were looking for the wrong thing. So I feel like there's this real opportunity to look at gaming and go, okay, we're not going to make those mistakes. As a brand, I'm going to go in knowing what my purpose is and experimenting with, a goal and not just for the sake of doing it for vanity's sake. And there's some good reasons for that in this kind of parallel. The community matters in gaming, like it does in social media.
Yeah.
While there's an element of kind of one-on-one and this personal connection that you can develop with gamers, much like you can with social media users, there is also this kind of echo effect and this amazing halo effect that if you get it right, there's that viral opportunity, but get it wrong, and you're done for. And to that authenticity point, that's exactly true. If you get that wrong and the community comes against you, people are going to hear about it. So for me, there's just parallels to draw from that. And we've spent 10, 15 years in social media now. Most marketers have some sort of foundation of knowledge from that. I think, like you say, it doesn't have to feel like this alien environment, even if you don't game as a marketer. There's things that you can draw on from the basics, or even not the basics, being, we've dealt with social media and the change that that's brought on. Learn from that and bring that into it.
No, for sure. I think that's good advice. Start with who you are as a brand, what your goals are, regardless of gaming, and then that's a good place to build from. Anthea, where esports, sponsorship principles should matter the same, right, as you go across. How different do you think esports is when it comes to sponsorship, for example? What's the same? What's different?
Right. Well, gaming and esports isn't really that different to traditional sports in terms of what the brand can benefit from, right? Be it visibility, top of mind awareness, engagement, brand affinity, and so on. Fans of all sports are passionate, and these fans do embrace brands who share that passion. So the brands who do show that they care about the game and its fans will be welcomed. However, I think that the difference is gaming and esports, more so than traditional sports, does provide a wider canvas for brands to create content, to tell stories via its influencers, gamers, and also through the game itself, right, as well as its characters. I think it does offer brands the chance to get into the games with the gamers, and also to bring elements of the game out to the real world. It provides a really rich and highly engaged online and offline platform that traditional sports is looking to catch up on.
I was looking at the example James shared, and I mean, when you're watching a gamer game and he's in game and you can see that and he's playing, and I thought, you're not going to have an experience like that where you're not going to watch Cristiano Ronaldo training, or you're not going to get body cam watching him do that, but you can really get in there with your favorite gamers or streamers and watch them and be part of that, and that's got to be quite special, I think.
For sure, yeah. I think traditional sports is looking at esports and learning, especially during the pandemic, how do you bring kind of the virtual audience into the arena and stadiums without being able to have physical fans back in.
I think the F1 drivers were doing a little bit of that, right? Kind of letting you into the training process and etc. Xinyi, what are you seeing in this space? I mean, how do you, for brands that come to you guys and say, well, what do we do? How do we do it? So difficult. What's a great entry point in, or what's a great way to move into gaming?
So there isn't an exact entry point, let's say if you're a new brand and you're trying to go into gaming. I think the key thing is that you have to make sure that when you go into gaming, you do your research. You go in and you make sure that the message you tell are strong, and they make strong connection together with the game. Just because gamers are so loyal, gamers feel like games are part of them and the games represent who they are. So when you go into a collaboration with a game, you shouldn't just go in with the idea of putting your logo somewhere. That kind of thing. You have to go in, and the goal is to enhance the gamer's experience in the game. When you do that, when the gamer understands that your brand is the one that's enhancing the experience in that game, it creates a very strong positive connection with the brand itself. And this will be, this makes it so much more effective. And this is how you can tell that this is going to be something that is positive for your brand and authentic itself.
So it's not just about chucking your logo on there, it's about really getting there, co-creating something. So once you've done that, you're in the game, you've decided I'm committing investment to this. How do we go about measuring it? I think this was one of the things that came out in the presentation, that brands are spending more money, investing more, but still really unsure about what good looks like. Charlotte, you see so much that comes across the desk. In your opinion, what does good look like?
I think it's about back to the point of the kind of principles of marketing. Kind of the measurement side, it kind of depends what you're trying to do. So you can do it from a brand perspective, but we're seeing particularly, and so the Drum has some awards, some digital awards, and some of the entries that we saw over the last year, genuinely driving sales results. So it does kind of depend what your brand is kind of trying to do, and good kind of depends on that. It's hard to kind of say. Yep. Good looks like X, Y, Z, because also different brands have different reasons to play in that space. I've seen some really good examples of insurance brands getting involved in games. Like there's an Australian insurance brand that got involved in Minecraft, and that was all tied to their kind of purpose around sustainability. So they weren't on there selling insurance, but they had a really big KPI against talking to kids around sustainability, and their game was, I think, downloaded 3 million times. They had an amazing connection with that game, and that filled into that purpose of kind of brand recognition around positive sustainability stories. So it can range from a really obvious connection of I'm Nike, I'm sponsoring something buy my products. It's an obvious fit to actually we're talking about something deeper. Dole is another good example of that. They're a fruit brand, and they're all about trying to get everyone around the world to eat healthily. So theirs is always about kind of that message and that education, and they've played in that space with NFTs, and it's been quite successful. So yeah, it depends what you're ultimately as a brand you're trying to do, which I think is why it comes back to those very basic things of we're not doing it for the sake of doing it. Do we want to sell something? Do we have a big brand campaign we want? Do we want to connect with our purpose? So yeah, for me, it very much varies, but I think we shouldn't forget the core marketing principles of our measurement, what we're KPIing ourselves against.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Charlotte. I think for brand, we also don't just look at, like good. We want to look beyond good. Let's say what is success to us, what makes a successful campaign. And gaming campaigns are no different from normal campaigns. Measurement is key. So like Charlotte said, measurement is something that is very important and very vital that we have across all campaigns, whether it's a gaming campaign or not. And measurement is always at the forefront. So what we do, we work very closely with internal, external team, ensuring that we have all these data, ensuring that there's data to support brand growth, so data to support brand lift. So overall, all these things are what actually determine the success of a campaign.
I like that we're talking about brand growth, brand lift. So there's a lot of, it feels like this is a great space to play in if you're thinking about building your brand. But also some good examples of how gaming can impact sales lift and business growth too. I think, Xinyi, we talked about this a little bit. You had an example from FMCG, of all places, I think, right?
Yes, definitely. So we were talking about how even brands like FMCG brands can really make an impact in gaming, and it can really get people to take notice and grow sort of interest in brand and grow a positive connection to the brand. So going back to like the helmet example, so mayonnaise can do that, Coca-Cola can do that. So if condiments and drinks and branded goods like LV, all these can tap into gaming, it really shows that any brands, any kind of product can really tap into it.
How do I tag it on with that, and how do I bring that element in without feeling it, without making it feel disconnected and like I've just stuck a deal on, You
gotta do your research. You gotta look into the brand. The thing is about gaming is that there's so many games out there, and there's so many ways to do it. And because of that, it gives you a lot of opportunity to find the right way and the sweet spot to go into it. So I would say you just have to do your research. You have to just find how your brand message can come across, how you can be authentic, how you can create a really interesting and enhanced experience for the user itself.
Is merchandise generally the way to do that? Usually, does it have to be a limited edition, something or other that works, or?
It would help.
Got it. Okay, note, limited edition helps. Anthea, any thoughts on this in terms of what a good campaign looks like? What are the elements of a good campaign that you've seen?
I think it comes through storytelling, right? The content creation around the brand's messaging, associated with the platform that they choose is really important. So yeah, content and how that's measured is customer feedback on social media, digital engagement platforms, and when you see this content get populated across different mediums, that's a measurement in itself.
So just amplification, like when the content starts to take off, has a life of its own, and you see that.
Yeah.
I'm going to just jump into a question that we've received. So by the way, if you've got questions for us, let us know. The team in the room, it's so nice to say that, are running around with microphones. And of course, if you're watching this online, you can type the question in on the screen. And we've got a question from Stephen who said, well, some brands like Mountain Dew, indirectly, I guess we've kind of touched on this, found a way to market themselves as a brand that caters to gamers and esports. But if you're not necessarily there, if you're a non-endemic brand, and he says specifically here, what about insurance? You talked about that, Charlotte. Or brands that we usually see in traditional football, more standard sponsor brands, maybe. So we have time. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that campaign you talked about, Australian Insurance.
Yeah. So I picked that as an example because actually I guess it's not like transferring football sponsorship onto gaming, but actually, Anthea might have an interesting perspective on that. It's completely different. It's a very different approach for an insurer. So yeah, they've developed a game in Minecraft, was specifically targeting sort of children to educate them around, saving the environment, because that's one of their messages around their sort of brand campaigns. So the metrics were all about engagement, so it wasn't about driving sales. I haven't seen where that connected to their sort of wider business objectives. But I just thought it was a really lovely execution because it was so surprising to see an insurance brand play in that space.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, maybe there are ways that, you do see big insurance brands sort of supporting football. Maybe there's a very simple kind of twist into esports there. I don't know.
I think it's also interesting to note that people are talking about esports is like a sports now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's also they're considering it to be an Olympic category itself. So that's something very interesting. And I think a lot of streamers and esports gamers themselves, they actually say the amount of work that they go behind is just as much as what a normal athlete does. And they consider themselves to be athletes itself.
No, I love that. That was just such a pitch in favor of esports and, esports gamers. Anthea, you were telling us about a sponsorship that BMW had with one of the teams. And I remember we were talking about this, and I thought, BMW eSport sponsor. How did that work? Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, BMW is a sponsor of T1. I mean, you do see a lot of premium brands getting into this space. Well, the perception was, these are kids playing games, and they don't have the money to spend. But what we're seeing is, they're actually looking to really engage and tell messages to this audience. With BMW, they're promoting some of their entry-level cars, making it young and youthful, and building that loyalty and following from a younger audience, and to take that journey, to have their audience take the journey with them.
I think there was an example of them getting involved with one of the players in the teams, and I think that's where you can really get into it in more detail and make human connections, right? So it's people to people, not just random brand logo placed here and team, and you'll never see us, we're on the jersey. But they got really engaged with one of the team members and his mom.
That's right, yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit more about that story?
Well, actually, I was asked not to share too much details on that.
Then not.
As a brand, they probably want to tell their own story. But I think maybe just to go back to the insurance question there, right? As you said, an insurance brand isn't, they're not coming into esports and putting out their brand logos and talking about their products. It's educating the audience about the need for entrants to take care of themselves for the long term. So I think it's really sharing about the brand story.
Okay. One of the things that came out in the report, to go back that too, was also the concern on risks. The risks associated with gaming. At the WFA, we think a lot about responsible media. We've got an entire initiative called the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, focused on managing brand risk. While looking at brand safety and thinking about how we can make sure we're doing right by consumers and right by brands also investing. When you think about the concerns, it's unregulated, which makes everything super duper authentic. What are some of the risks that you may have to Xinyi had to think about and help brands mitigate, for instance, as you think about campaigns?
So when it comes to risk, to be honest, most of the things has risk.
Okay.
Gaming is just another platform that may have risks. So same thing, brands have to do their research. They have to look into the game, ensure that what they stand for is something that the game also stand for. We have to look into ensuring the streamers that we support, they are also aligned with what the brand is about. So it's a lot about research. It's a lot about ensuring that this is a partnership that goes both ways. It's not just about the brand, but it's also about the game. And when we come together, it becomes a stronger sort of partnership that can actually create a bit less risk because we are both together in it.
Charlotte, you mentioned I guess, social media and thinking about the learnings we can take from that into gaming. One of the principles of social media as brands went into it was that, people don't connect with brands, people connect with people. And you want to connect with, you think about your brand voice and just being human and more personable. There are so many opportunities in gaming to really connect people to people, personalities. It feels so human. How do you think, we might move forward in this space and just keep that authenticity without making everything too sanitized? How do we do that? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, on the risk thing, I think if you're seeing a shift in dollars towards gaming, that you're naturally going to see some of the concerns coming from what we've seen before. So ad fraud, brand safety, all of these things are going to have to be concerns that marketers think about, particularly in that kind of media buy space of this, where that would occur. But the technology is moving fast enough. You're seeing some of the kind of players that provide tech to sort of protect against some of that stuff already moving into gaming and kind of helping. So I think that some of that risk is sort of mitigated by the lessons from the past and being able to kind of future-proof some of that risk to a degree. But to your point on authenticity and kind of keeping that human side, again, I think it is just learning from the past, and I think not getting trapped in some of the vanity measures, because I think that's sometimes where you can lose that. You're just looking for bigger audiences. These are people who spend a lot of time in these games, even on casual games. People dip in and out for hours within the day. It needs to feel genuine. It needs to feel creative, and all these things. And I think that's how you can kind of live in this space for a long time.
It feels like with gaming, this is not so much the last frontier, because new frontiers keep emerging, but it feels like the frontier that is so real and authentic because it's not sanitized. You watch players game and they will curse as they do and play as they do and live as they do. And that's going to be something so delightful about that. Anthea, what are you seeing? What are your thoughts around risk the risk evolved in esports, for instance?
Well, I guess To address the risk in gamers, the risk is not unique in sponsoring gamers specifically, right? That's a risk when endorsing an individual or even a team. As Xinyi that mentioned, do your research, find out if the gamer's values and temperament fits with the brand. Listen to the fans. Are they loyal? The fans, tell a lot about the gamers that they support. And in professional esports, understand the code of conduct of the team that's managing the gamers. So I think these are some of the ways to mitigate some of the risk in that space. In the risk into authenticity, I think it's essential. It's an essential component to be authentic. Otherwise, gamers do sniff out the insincerity. Potential consumers need to know who the brand is and what they stand for in order to engage. And as an example that I always have, it's like building a friendship with the audience, right? You show your true self to your friends, and you want to let them into your inner space to build the relationship with that same openness. Will allow the gamers to really embrace the brand.
I like that. I think that speaks to transparency. It's got to be an open relationship with the brand and the audience and the game and the environment, or you're going to get called out on it. And that I think, and you talked about that, Charlotte, that's actually a bigger risk if you get called out for muscling your way into a space and not having the permission to play, literally, I think.
One of the good examples I always find with some of these topics, and has been a good example for years and years and years in different spaces, is Red Bull, because they will always come into a space of genuinely invest in the kind of grassroots and the teams and, support, I guess, the growth of it as a movement and not just like the badging, to your point. Yeah. So in music, they built literal music studios in different towns and supported artists to create music. It wasn't just them going, oh, cool, we've got a festival, like, buy our product. Red Bull are very, very good at kind of finding that way to actually help talent grow. So I think if you're to this point about the authenticity and kind of having that human connection, Jen, if you especially at that level, if you're coming in at that top level, help the talent grow, and I think then the fans will see that, and that will come across as authentic.
And this goes back to another aspect of social, which is communities, which you talked about right at the start, that you really have these communities, and thinking about what you talked about, grassroots, a real grassroots approach to build and grow the industry with the industry, as opposed to just popping in and out, which you can, but it's never going to be that meaningful. Again, if you have questions, we have a little bit more time before we wrap. So let us know, type the questions in. One last thing for you, as we see if there are more questions coming in, is gaming for everyone? Would you ever tell a client, Xinyi, actually, no, keep your money, maybe not for you?
I would say it really depends on the objective of the brand. Okay. So if the objective, it's about being innovative, it's about targeting the right audience, it's about a strong message that, people can be passionate about, I say definitely go for it. But if, say, your objective is maybe just purely to drive sales without, a lot of all these innovations and a very straightforward campaign, you just want to create, your logo inside, I would say maybe we need to rethink, maybe a different brief would fit this better. So really, I wouldn't say that a brand wouldn't fit, but I would say the brief may not fit gaming.
So really have a think about it. What about you, Anthea? There is such a wide range of games, mobile games. You're playing online, different types. Surely there's something for a brand out there that's interested.
Yeah, I think for sure. I would say gaming it's available to everyone, though it may not be for everyone. It's affordable, it's accessible, barriers of entry is low. And as you said, there are so many genres of games that any one individual is bound to find some game they enjoy playing at some point in their life. Everyone remembers their first video game, and then they explore other games as they grow older. Even retirees discover a new game or two. So, there's always a target audience for a brand to use gaming to tell, to tell that brand message and to engage with that particular audience. But fundamentally, it's still an activity. It's a form of entertainment. And people have the freedom to choose if they want to partake in or not. And brands do have a lot of different options. But it's a space that they should at least jump in and give it a try at some point.
I love what she said there, that it's entertainment, and I think we approach it sometimes so seriously, but actually it is entertainment, and it should be joyful as much as it should be innovative. It should be fun because it's a game, I guess on that note, if there was one thing you wanted to leave everyone in the room with, or everyone today, or everyone watching with, what would be that one piece of advice, that piece of insight, or what do you see next, the future of gaming?
Sorry. So I think one piece of advice for brands trying to tap into gaming, you should go into your app store and download the top 3 games and play it.
I love that.
You can't understand how gamers work unless you become one. So I think that's very key. And when it comes to trends and where this is moving to, I feel very strongly that we should take notice that females are going to be a very big part of the gaming industry. It's something that we shouldn't, keep thinking it's a male-dominated industry. Just look at this panel itself. We're all females. And this is
Amen to that.
So I definitely think that we need to realize that females do play a big part now, and we should look into how these games are actually moving into that direction.
Lovely. Anthea, any last thoughts? And then we'll wrap with you, Charlotte.
Yeah, and I think I would like to frame this as a question to the brand and ask, what is the story they want to tell? Before they enter the gaming space, they should have a story to tell about why their brand is relevant to that gaming audience. So it's something they'll need to think about. That story needs to uplift and connect meaningfully. Then develop it along the way based on fan feedback, and it's always be listening.
I love that, Charlotte.
Yeah, I think for me is to have an eye on what's coming next, because we haven't even touched on. I'm sure some people in other sessions have talked about the metaverse and things like that, but arguably we're kind of moving towards this phase where sort of a lot of people will start to blur the realms of kind of reality and online in a sense of how they live their lives. So lots of their friends will just be online. Yeah. Lots of their encounters will just be online and within these communities. And that's driving all sorts of interesting, I think, opportunities for brands in literally selling stuff. Will a Gucci bag cost the same in the metaverse as it would in real life? Maybe. There's all these kind of quite interesting questions that I think that we can start looking at now. I mean, the basic starting point is definitely download some games and play if you haven't. But, if you're already immersed in that world, I think start thinking about, where this is heading, and start to think about how your brand fits in within that, because then you can start to really experiment and do interesting things with purpose and with fun, with entertainment, with joy.
I love that. So play, have fun as you're doing it. I think about your brand as a brand. Think about the brand. What the fundamentals are, what you hope to achieve. I love that Andrew talked about storytelling, and how gaming can uplift and amplify everything you're looking to do. Don't neglect female gamers. So girl power is real, and remember that. And then what you're talking about, Charlotte, that this is like a portal to the rest of the metaverse, and getting it right in gaming suddenly will help with more that brands do online. So thank you both. Thank you, Anthea, for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for being part of this. Gaming Matters.
Thank you.